State Senator Rodney Ellis and John Thomas, founder and president of Thomas Partners Strategy and a Republican pollster. So, John, let me start with you. 4 of the Democrats would beat the president, according to the polls right now. Do you think that will last?
Absolutely. I think what we've seen.
Oh, this is for John.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, I actually don't believe that'll be the case. Look, polling is reflective, not predictive, meaning it tells us where we are today, but it doesn't necessarily reflect where we'll be in November. And look, a campaign, none of these Democrats have endured any serious negative campaigning by Trump or the Republicans, and they are literally putting the nails in their own coffins.
No, they get slammed all the time by the president's tweets, though.
No, but I'm talking about the multi-billion-dollar effort that Trump and the Republicans are war chest that they're putting together to attack whoever the eventual nominee is. So look, I don't actually think this is much of a concern. The bigger concern, if you're looking at these numbers, should be Joe Biden. Because if you look at all of these Democrats down ticket, is that they can say that they too, hypothetically, can beat Donald Trump. And that is Joe Biden's fundamental brand promise for why you should vote for him if you're a Democrat in a primary, is that he's the only one that can beat the president. Well, today the polling says otherwise, and I would be worried because once that's taken away from Sleepy Joe, there's really not much left.
Dallas, your turn.
Well, look, I absolutely think it is reflective of where we are right now, but it's also reflective of where we've been. The country has shown a great disenchantment. What's important to note from the poll is that the president's unfavorable approval ratings are at 56%. The country is unhappy and they want a path forward. As for the Democratic primary and that field of candidates, what we're seeing is that the candidates are putting forth a lot of different ideas. Elizabeth Warren is pumping out different policy positions every week, and Democratic voters are listening. They're trying to find who their candidates and the voice that they want to hear is in this crowded field. I think it is something that Vice President Biden should be concerned about, because what we're starting to see is that other candidates are looking for different ways to pick up momentum and break out of the field. And this new poll from Fox is a sign that this is beginning to happen. But it is also a sign that there is problems looming for President Trump. As not just these top 4, but every single Democrat that was polled in this poll was shown to have beat President Trump in a head-to-head matchup.
John, you mentioned Dallas. You mentioned that, John. That unfavorable rating, 56%, favorable only 42%. What does the president have to do to get out from being underwater on that?
Well, you know what's interesting is, first of all, this isn't a popularity contest, all right, number one. Number two, this is a choice between Trump and whoever the Democratic nominee is. Right now, in these head-to-head stack-ups, again, Elizabeth Warren has not been lit up over the fact of what the implications of her policies would be to everyday Americans, number one.
He refers
number
to the
two,
senator
look,
as Pocahontas.
But what this polling does tell us, and I know the Trump team is aware of this, is that the Republicans are absolutely going to have to peel the bark off of whoever the Democratic nominee is, because if you're running on approval ratings alone, it's not a good path for the president.
Yeah, Dallas.
I think the president still overall should be optimistic.
And Dallas, what about that? When it really starts getting into the trenches, when the Democratic nominee is chosen, that has a target on his back from the Republicans and certainly the president.
Well, we've been there. We see that every election where each side goes back and forth at each other. I think what we have to be really concerned with is the overall feeling of the country in terms of where we stand, not only here at home, but in our position in the rest of the world, the stability of the rest of the world. We look at incidents of what happened recently in terms of the president and banning members of Congress from visiting Israel and what that means for our diplomacy. I think the Republicans are quick to talk about the economy and believe that the economy is simply going to carry them through this election. And I think that in this time that people are worried about a little bit more than that. Yes, certainly they care about their pocketbooks, but they also want to know that our country is in a place that is moving forward. It is some of the most divisive times that we've seen here in this country in decades.
The Israelis made that decision, and then they backtracked, at least as it deals with the Representative Tlaib. Finally, though, for both of you, and I'll start with you, John, doesn't it get down to the Electoral College? Because then again, we're right at this point where Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, they could decide this election. So all this discussion will get down to just a handful of states.
And that's right. I mean, the national polls are interesting to look for trend lines. Like, for instance, Elizabeth Warren has consistently been gaining nationally. That's interesting. But you're totally right. Whether it's in the Democratic primary or in a November election, it comes down to Florida, it comes down to Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio. A few of these states. Look, polling that just came out this week in Wisconsin shows a dead tide. These are states that are concerned primarily about the economy. And if you look at Trump's economic numbers, overall, voters, over 50% of them think that Trump deserves credit for having a good economy. That's what this is going to come down to. And I will leave you with this, that the Trump campaign is running in a superior effort to what they did in 2016. It is fully data-driven. They know exactly what they're doing. I have every confidence that given the underlying economic numbers that are so good for this administration, that he will prevail, especially when he lights up whoever the Democratic nominee is on their extreme economic policies.
And Dallas, last word. I mean, look, as I said, it gets down to the Electoral College, no matter how many votes you get across the country.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I agree. That's what we saw 4 years ago, and that's what we'll see in 2020, that it will come down to these few states. It'll come down to what message really resonates from each side. Sure, these are states that are heavily driven by the economy. I think we're all heavily driven by the economy. We want to live good lives. But I think that as we began to pick this apart, the Democrats are also going to have a lot to work with in terms of what they're going to throw at President Trump. So I think that we should all sit back and get ready for a very good show as we move into the next election.
All right, sit back, get ready. We'll put our Teflon on and our helmets and get ready.
It's the same charges from 2016, Eric. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now.
All right, well, John.
Oh, no, there's 4 more years of new ones.
All right, we'll see. All right, gentlemen, thank you. All right, Thal.
Eric, 10